edition, we profile the toughest tracks of yesterday and today. We start with the granddaddy of them all, Daytona, home of NASCAR's Super Bowl, the Daytona 500. Next, we'll profile two tracks that no longer exist today, but they provided some of the greatest racing in the sport's history. We'll show you Riverside, the first road course in NASCAR. Now, that provided a whole new challenge to the drivers. And next, we'll profile Langhorne Speedway, that's just outside Philadelphia. This round track was the site of many thrilling races. And finally, we'll visit Darlington, the track that's too tough to tame. Top Winston Cup drivers share some of their experiences from Darlington, and you'll get a first-hand look at the track from the driver's seat with me behind the wheel. So let's get to it.
On December 14, 1947, at the Streamline Hotel here in Daytona Beach, Florida, 35 men sat at a table and laid the groundwork for a national sanctioning body that would govern the sport of stock. A man who has been here to victory lane at Daytona more than any other driver in stock car racing, the King, Richard Petty. Over the years, the NASCAR Winston Cup schedule has included events on super speedway, short tracks, and road courses. But in 1991, if you want to see the Winston Cup stars on a road course out west, you have to come here to Sears Point International Raceway. But in years past, the road course that's hosted more NASCAR events than any other was Riverside. Constructed in the California desert 60 miles southeast of Los Angeles, Riverside opened in June of 1958. Eddie Gray of Cardennia, California, won that grueling 500-mile event that took over 6 hours to complete. It would be 5 years before the NASCAR Tour would return to Riverside, but then would run at least one race per year there for the next 25 seasons. In the early 60s, road racing legend Dan Gurney seemed unbeatable, winning the first 4 Motor Trend 500s in a row.
There are so many memories when you look back over 23 years, but I think probably one of the most significant experiences and memories that I had was my good friend Dan Gurney winning 4 500-mile NASCAR Winston Cup stock car races back in early 60s, and then he went away one year and he came back and won it for the 5th time, and to do that was a feat that probably will never ever be duplicated by anybody, and that really put Riverside on the map.
In 1969, Richard Petty in a Ford for the first time took his first of 5 wins on a track he learned to love.
You know, the difference in Riverside road course and all the rest of the road courses I ever run, I always felt like that Riverside was a super speedway. You know, as far as had a lot of straightaways, good corners on it. You know, it was a fast racetrack as far as fast car. Riverside was always good. We always run good at Riverside, and I always look forward to, especially running through the S's. I loved going around number 2, trying to get up to number 6 and see how much dust you could stir up. But that was the best part of the racetrack to me.
Through the 70s, Riverside was one of the most popular stops on the tour for many of the drivers who grew up racing on the oval tracks, but looked forward to challenging the tough 9-turn circuit.
You know, you had to have your act together to go fast there, because turn 9 was a fast corner, and you had to set up your car, you know, so it would work there and still work through the S's and get around the rest of the course. But I always enjoyed it, and hopefully someday we'll have another track in that area, just like it.
In the 80s, Riverside was a track for new drivers to make their first mark. Tim Richmond had his first career win at Riverside, as did Ricky Rudd and Bill Elliott. From 1981 through 1986, it was the site of the final race of the season and was a key event in determining who would become the Winston Cup champion. Southern California real estate development finally overran the Riverside facility, and the track was sacrificed to make way for a shopping mall and subdivisions. On June 12, 1988, Rusty Wallace won the final event for NASCAR at Riverside. The Winston Cup Series still has a very strong presence in the West with tracks in Sonoma and Phoenix. But it was at Riverside, California that the Western fans first fell in love with NASCAR stock car racing. In 1991, the Winston Cup drivers compete on some challenging tracks across America, such as The Rock, the North Carolina Motor Speedway, Darlington, the track too tough to tame, the Monster Mile at Dover, Delaware, and the high banks of Bristol. But if you look back to the early days of NASCAR and ask what was the toughest track they ever saw, many of the old-timers will simply say Langhorne. The Langhorne Speedway in Langhorne, Pennsylvania was famous in its later years for hosting the annual Race of Champions for open-wheel modified cars. But if you go back to NASCAR's first year of existence in 1949, you'll find the fourth race in NASCAR history was run there. The track was described as the Great Left Turn, a 1-mile circle track, not an oval, but a circle. The Grand National Series ran at Langhorne 17 times from 1949 through 1957, and it certainly earned the respect of everyone who competed there.
Langhorne was, other than Darlington, was that one of our biggest races. You know, we'd run a 200-miler up there, dirt, and it's a mile dirt, and it was a complete circle. You had one little spot on the back stretch, you got straightened out for a little bit. The rest of the track, you was kind of in a broad slide all the way around the racetrack. It was, for a dirt track, it was a pretty hairy race, a fast racetrack, and it probably more drivers bit to dust at Langhorne than any other racetrack, I guess, in the United States.
It was a challenge to go there. I love the racetrack. It was almost a pure round racetrack, and you could keep a car hanging in a broad slide for a solid mile, and you never did come out of that. If you got out of it, you'd get run off and left, because that was the trick to running that place, was keep a car sideways the whole mile around it.
And that's the way you love to run those cars, sideways, right?
Well, if I couldn't see the rear quarter panel when I was looking out the right side, I didn't think I had it hung out far enough.
Herb Thomas had 3 of his 48 career wins at the Pennsylvania track. Buck Baker was a 2-time winner there, as was Tim Flock. And the driver who won more dirt NASCAR races than anyone, Lee Petty, he had 1 win there. In the track's later years, it was crowded out by subdivisions and shopping centers, and a true part of American auto racing history was lost. So as we look back on the glory days of Langhorne, it's a real reminder of the brave and daring competitors that make up NASCAR's rich heritage. When Harry Gant captured the Southern 500 this past September, it marked the 42nd running of NASCAR's most tradition-rich event. While Gant is NASCAR's oldest winner, Darlington is NASCAR's oldest superspeedway. While the construction of Darlington Raceway back in 1950 was the dream of Harold Brazington and Jack Ramsey, it was the fans who lived out the fantasy of watching brave new heroes drive the South's first high banks. The track was constructed as an egg-shaped oval with turns 1 and 2 600 feet shorter than turns 3 and 4. This was done to keep from disturbing Ramsey's favorite fishing pond just outside the second turn. It was this odd shape that would turn Brazington and Ramsey's dream into a nightmare for drivers. The first Southern 500 was won by Californian Johnny Mance in a 1950 Plymouth. It was the first time NASCAR's stock car division had ever run on a paved oval. One driver still active who competed in the first Southern 500 is Herschel McGriff.
Well, I do remember I put the car, got in the car, drove it to Darlington, took the headlights out, bought a lot of tires and wheels for spares from the local service station, because they didn't have racing tires available at that time. I blew 10 or 11 tires, just blew them out, had to change them with a wheel wrench. I even got out of the car a couple times. The other thing, of course, I was only 22 years old. You know, that race was, I think, close to 8 hours long. The only thing I don't remember getting tired.
Believe it or not, open-wheel cars ran at Darlington, with future Southern 500 winner Buck Baker winning in NASCAR's Speedway division in 1952. A 2-time National Stock Car champion, Herb Thomas was the first 3-time winner of the Southern 500, winning in 1951, 1954, and 1955. But the Southern 500 is more than just a race. The festival surrounding the event in the early days included beauty pageants and parades that involved the entire South Carolina community. Always held on Labor Day weekend, the event attracted legendary crowds that became part of the fabric of the early days of the sport. In 1956, another legend, Curtis Turner, won his only Southern 500 before a record crowd estimated at 70,000 fans. It was quite an upset in 1959 when a Yankee, Jim Reed from Peekskill, New York, won the 10th annual Southern 500. Another big upset came in 1961 when Nelson Stacy from Cincinnati, Ohio, made his first NASCAR win a triumph in the famed Southern 500. Stacy passed Marvin Panch, driving in relief of Fireball Roberts, with only 7 laps remaining to capture the Labor Day Classic. In 1963, Fireball Roberts won his second and final Southern 500, averaging a remarkable 129.784 miles per hour.